Thanks a lot. Lest you be confused, I'm from the other university in Saskatchewan. We're not part of the U15, but rather the remaining R83. It's the University of Regina. One of the issues about going towards the end of the day is a lot of people have already said much of what you'd like to say. So that's one of my disclaimers. Just consider it an homage. And the second one is I realize also that I'm kind of partially blocking your way to the bar. So I'll keep that in mind. I didn't, first also I'd like to acknowledge the unceded lands upon which we gather peacefully today. And I didn't trust Bill to do my heartfelt thank you, so I will reiterate it. Thanks again to the Planning Committee and the organizers, the Harry Crow Foundation, our national presence in the CAUT, and my own union, IRFA, which to me is a very important collective strength all of those organizations represent, and they allow us to do the important research and work that we do. And so I really like to pay homage to them as well. I also want to acknowledge those who have fought for the privileges that we enjoy today. Those people who have struggled and who have paid the experience with real cost. I think about them often, and I feel fortunate that I've not had to pay any real costs for any of my advocacy work, and I recognize that that's largely done on the backs of my collective strength in the unions that represent me and in the people who have fought the hard battles before me. My first homage is to Thomas Doherty. Good work is done in all aspects of our academic activity, but it is now done in the clandestine and unofficial manner, and it is done despite the official criteria. Going in this way, beyond the mediocrities that conformity with official criteria necessarily brings. Incidentally, I was once told not to do too many slides, that people just wanted to hear you. But I actually, when I'm an audience member, like to read this. I like to read the slides, especially when I grow tired of people's voices. So please feel free to do that today. To start on an upbeat note, I find that we are in an exciting time of methodological possibility. These are the global trends that I work in, include social justice, community engaged work, participatory work, decolonizing, place-based and indigenous epistemologies. As well, there's alternative forms of research production, output, and dissemination, all of which are fighting and reclaiming their inherent legitimacy. That excites me. What counts as an acceptable form and product or output of our scholarship continues to be contested, disrupted, and broadened to include artifacts well beyond the scope of traditional peer review and journal articles and impact factors. In fact, there's even an online journal that reviews anything but actual journal articles, and they peer review those. So if you've ever had the chance to check it out, it's the CES for Health, the Community Engaged Scholarship for Health. So Bill and Dawn, if you're here, it really is, as you said, but worse. Because now we can see how all of these phenomena fit together, as you pointed out, presciently in counting out the scholars, and that was 14 years ago, which is an issue that I hope we get to deal with today. We've known about this issue for many, many years, over decades, and what are we going to do about it? Why are we still always facing and chopping off the multi-headed hydra that is key performance indicators and in its various incarnations? As much as I'm hopeful for the trends that I alluded to earlier, what alarms me now, and was mentioned many times already, are neoliberalism, new public management, and accountability. I think that one of the things we need to do is look at these as part of the same processes, and our analysis has to cover each of these together, and we shouldn't really look at them as separate. Because neoliberalism is used so often, and I know that all of you know what it means, but so you know what I think it means, I always like to define it. So for me, neoliberalism is and for many others, I suppose, is a re-articulation and reconfiguration of the 18th and 19th century liberalist argument that market exchange captures an essential and basic truth about human nature and the creation and maintenance of social order. As such, it should become the model for conducting and managing a host of activities that were previously deemed outside of or above the intrusion of the marketplace. This new greater good was seen as being brought about not through the cooperation and the government leveling mechanisms of the past, but through the self-interested activities of actors, each working independently and unknowingly. Empowered consumer citizens and taxpayers whose desires and self-interest would lead them to demand low costs, accountability, and transparency from all those who provided them with products and services, including the state. Neoliberalism, in terms of the university, leads to the subjugation of universities to neoliberal market ideologies. The university is increasingly conceived as an entrepreneurial training scheme for knowledge workers, complete with heavily indebted customers. While setting its scholarly ambitions no higher than impact factors, university rankings, branding, market share of students, and the wishes and dictates of corporate-styled and directed research and development. Following Allison's talk, here's a how-to guide for anybody in management about what to do. You adopt private sector management practices, introduce market-style incentives and disincentives, introduce a customer orientation coupled with consumer choice and branding, devolve budget functions while maintaining tight control through auditing and oversight, outsource labor with casual temporary staff, unbundle the public sector into units organized by product, and emphasize greater output performance measures and controls. I got a kick out of Marc Burroway. He likened this whole process to a Soviet planning. A complex incentive scheme was introduced with the collaboration of universities to simulate market competition, but in reality it looked like Soviet planning. Just as the Soviet planners had to decide how to measure the output of their factories, how to develop measures of planned fulfillment, so now universities have to develop elaborate indices of output, key performance indicators, reducing research to publications, publications to refereed journals, and refereed journals to their impact factors. And sadly, just as Soviet planning produced absurd distortions, heating that could not be switched off, shoes that were supposed to suit everyone, tractors that were too heavy because targets were in tons, glass that was too thick because targets were in volume. So now the monitoring of higher education is replete with parallel distortions that obstruct production, dissemination, and transmission. While the use of key performance indicators and productivity pressures in academic settings are not new, I think you can attest to that. What is new under audit culture and what sets the current moment apart is the sheer magnitude, depth, and ubiquity of audit culture's implementation and pervasiveness. By 2010, over a dozen countries had introduced national performance-based research funding systems. And they include Australia, Belgium, Denmark, Finland, Hong Kong, Italy, New Zealand, Norway, Poland, Portugal, Spain, Sweden, and the United Kingdom. The shift to audit culture occurs on a spectrum as contexts move from a nebulous publish or perish dictum to a discipline and publish ultimatum. That is, audit culture is created when key performance indicators transition from being merely indicators, however poorly conceived, to becoming prescriptive, quantified, benchmarked, and enforced targets and technologies of governance. So what's at stake? The end result is a loss of disciplinary and collegial autonomy and authority to assess what counts. Examples from the United Kingdom, Australia, and New Zealand suggest an overemphasis on KPIs under an audit culture often leads to a gamed academy resulting in the overproduction of safe research that can be characterized as incremental, mainstream, short-term, and international at the expense of the local and national. Ultimately, academic freedom itself is at risk. As the UK, Australia, New Zealand provide distant early warning to audit culture's dysfunctioning, for example, Sayer describes the process in this way. The imperative to maximize REF scores increasingly drives how research itself is conducted, affecting what is studied, how it is funded, and where it is published. It also influences academic hiring and promotion decisions, with candidates' REF ability often trumping all other considerations. What began back in 1986 as a light touch periodic appraisal has spawned internal university bureaucracies that continually monitor and increasingly seek to manage individuals' research. So integral has the REF become to the life of UK universities that many British academics would likely have trouble imagining the world without it. When accountability standards become entrenched, they lead to a narrowing of scholarship, of what is possible, a move away from slow, local, community-engaged, and curiosity-driven science. Which is important because, as Marc state, good scholarship requires time. Time to think, time to write, read, research, analyze, edit, and collaborate. Accountability standards are, in practice, end runs that allow the state or the university to effectively bypass academic freedom without direct confrontation.